Thank you, Camilla. Thank you for helping us transition from the busyness of our daily work to this mindful moment. And I'm very happy that we are here together. Welcome, dear colleagues, to this fourth Eyamba Festival, the third one online, unfortunately. And for those 2 days of exchange between colleagues on being a mindfulness teacher. Today, we welcome Camilla Genee and Gloria Heffernan to share with us how poetry and music can inform the transmission and the practice of mindfulness. So as teachers, we often use poetry or stories. Today, we engage in a dialogue between language and music. Gloria, Camilla, and I have prepared this unit to have this dialogue and to allow for inspiration on how to use music and how to use poetry in your own teaching and your own practice. So to introduce you first, Camilla. Camilla is a violinist. It's her first profession. She actively works with orchestras. She gives performances, and she's also a music and a violin teacher. But her second profession will be in law, because Camilla and I know each other from law school. We both study law in Rotterdam. So Camilla, thank you. You're a multi-talented person and you're busy, so thank you for being here. Camilla will, in the course of this unit, interpret some of the poems that Gloria will offer us, or introduce us to a particular prompt that Gloria has prepared for us, or play while we write. So there are different ways in which Camilla will help us to do this session in a way that we learn most of it. Gloria, you are a poet and a facilitator, and you're also the author of the book that's on my table, but my screen is blurred, so maybe you can put it up, which is the Exploring Poetry of Presence, a companion guide for the book by Phyllis and Ruby, which is Poetry and Presence. And that is an anthology of poems that can be very well used in mindfulness. So Gloria wrote that companion guide to the other book in order to make it more valuable, and also to give 7 different ways, the 7 Ps, on how to use poetry in mindfulness teaching. Gloria, I have been so grateful when after I discovered the book of Phyllis and Ruby, I also discovered yours. And then you were ready to come to this workshop. We are today, dear colleagues, in 4 time zones. And you are farthest away, Gloria, because you are in Syracuse, New York. And we have people from the UK time zone, people in Portugal, people in the UK. But we also have people from Israel, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Cyprus, who are 2 hours later than we are. So for them, it's 6 o'clock now, or 5 o'clock. Well, anyways, something like that. We are in 4 time zones. Gloria, I will now close my microphone and welcome you to do the crossing the threshold that Camilla so elegantly helped us do with the music. You will do it with words. Yes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your warm welcome. And thank you, Camilla, for that extraordinary introduction to this. I feel like I've just had a massage, and that's a great way to start writing, and it's also a great way to start thinking about poetry and music as a tool as tools in the delivery of mindfulness to an audience. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about how the book Exploring Poetry of Presence came about, because it was really a very important introduction to mindfulness for me. It was in fact a lifeline. It came about during the lockdown caused by the pandemic, during a time in which I found myself riveted to the TV, to news, to all of the horrifying things over which I could exercise absolutely no control, and which was taking me out of my own mindfulness, my own experience of the moment. And one day, it was a very specific moment, I had been watching a news broadcast, and I just thought, I can't do this constantly. I can't keep focusing on this. I've got to do something positive. And I picked up Poetry of Presence, which had already been my favorite poetry anthology for quite a while. And it has 150 poems by a wide variety of writers, but all with the focus on mindfulness, on crossing that threshold into mindfulness. And all of the poems that I'll be referring to today, most of the poems that I'll be referring to today are from the anthology, from Poetry of Presence. And I'm very happy to announce that there is a volume 2 of Poetry of Presence, which will be coming out this spring, with many of the same poets, new poems, and I am sure that it will be just as powerful and as important. But on that day when I picked up the book, I found I just opened randomly to a page, and the poem that I found was I Will Keep Broken Things by Alice Walker. And I found that it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And then I began a practice, my daily practice of opening the book to a random page to find out basically to find what I needed to hear. And I don't say that in a magical kind of woo-woo sort of way. I say that because every poem in here is something that I always need to be reminded of, something that I always need to be present to. And that's the way in which I've used it. And when I told Phyllis about this, she invited me to write it up, which became about a year-long project and resulted in the book Exploring Poetry of Presence. So when Katharina contacted me late last spring to talk about this conference, I was first overwhelmed by the honor of being in your presence. You are the people who are working to make mindfulness a reality for people, to guide them in that practice. And it's very important. And I started wondering, well, what do I really have to offer to an audience of experts? And I started looking at the parallels between mindfulness teaching and teaching the writing of poetry, because in both instances, people need to trust the person who is guiding them. They need to feel safe because we're inviting them to go into their most vulnerable places. And in poetry, in teaching the writing of poetry, we're not only inviting them to go into those places, but also to create something there and then have the courage to share it with readers, with an audience. So that's how the book came about. And in preparing for today's session, I revisited a poem that I had written some time ago about how I approach the teaching of poetry. And I will start by sharing that with you after we have a few moments to do some silent centering. And Katharina, I'd like to begin with the trailer to the video to the book, to Phyllis and Ruby's book. Is that something that that you can queue up, or should I do a screen share? It's the trailer for Poetry of Presence.
Yeah, I will do it.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll have 2 minutes of silence, and then we'll begin the actual poetry.
So, Gloria, do you want the 2 minutes of silence now, or you want the trailer first?
Let's do the trailer first, and then that I think will be a nice threshold into the silent centering. Thank you.
Okay, then. There are always surprises, aren't there?
Yes.
So I put it up now.
And we don't have to do that.
It will be there in a moment.
Okay, all right. This is one of those moments when I get to breathe and say, it'll all be fine.
Don't worry. Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you.
No.
And I can promise you all it's worth the wait. It's a beautiful video.
So I will skip the advertisement.
Did you download Grammar?
There we go. Share screen.
In the great poem, How to Be a Poet by Wendell Berry, one of the pivotal lines in that poem is that to be a poet, you have to accept what comes from silence. So I'm eager to see what will come from the silence that we'll be sharing at various times today, and also what comes from the extraordinary music and the wonderful words we'll hear. I'd like to begin with a poem that I wrote. It's not in the anthology, but I do think it speaks to the idea of what it is to teach mindfulness, much like what it is to teach poetry. And this is called Rules for Teaching Swimming. I mean, poetry. Think of the classroom as a pool party. As the host, it is your job to fill the pool and invite the swimmers to the edge. When they see the cool water glistening in the sun, some will inch their way in, dangling their legs over the side. Some will lament that the water is too cold or too deep. Some will dive right in. You are not there to force anyone to swim. You are there to be the lifeguard, to let them know they are safe. When they are ready, they will find a way to immerse themselves. And that's very much at the heart of the way that I teach writing poetry. It's never an assignment. It's never something that is something that people have to do in a particular way. It's all about finding your way to the edge of the pool. And I think of that as a crossing of a threshold. And one of the poems in Poetry of Presence that takes the crossing of the threshold in a very literal way is a poem called Bally High Calls Mama by the wonderful poet Marilyn Nelson. I'm sorry. And I'm going to read this poem to you. And I'm going to read it twice. The first time I'm going to read it the way I believe it is written to be read, which is frenetic. And then I'm going to read it a second time so that you can bathe a little bit more comfortably in Marilyn Nelson's words. But I think this is an expression of the way in which people move from the hecticness, the busyness of our lives into that moment of being present. And we'll talk a little bit about it after the second reading. Bally High Calls Mama. As I was putting away the groceries I'd spent the morning buying for the week's meals I'd planned around things the baby could eat, things my husband would eat, and things I should eat because they weren't too fattening, late on a Saturday afternoon, after flinging my coat on a chair and wiping the baby's nose while asking my husband what he'd fed it for lunch and whether the medicine I'd brought for him had made his cough improve, wiping the baby's nose again, checking its diaper, stepping over the baby, who was reeling to and from the bottom kitchen drawer with pots and pans and plastic cups, occasionally clutching the hem of my skirt and whining to be held. I was half listening for the phone, which never rings for me, to ring for me, and someone's voice to say that I could forget about handing back my students' exams, which I'd had for a week, that I was right about the wasteland, that I'd been given a raise, all the time wondering how my sister was doing, whatever happened to my old lovers, and why my husband wanted a certain brand of toilet paper, and wished I'd hadn't. But I'd bought another fashion magazine that promised to make me beautiful by Christmas, and there wasn't any room for the creamed corn. And every time I opened the refrigerator door, the baby rushed to grab whatever was on the bottom shelf, which meant I constantly had to wrestle jars of its mushy food out of its sticky hands. And I stepped on the baby's hand, and the baby was screaming, and I dropped the bag of cake flour I'd brought to make cookies. And my husband rushed in to find out what was wrong because the baby was drowning out the sound of the touchdown, although I had scooped it up and was holding it in my arms, so its crying was inside my head like an echo in a barrel, and I was running cold water on its hand while somewhere in the back of my mind wondering what to say about the wasteland and whether I could get away with putting broccoli in a meatloaf when suddenly, through the window, came the wild cry of geese. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty apt description of many of my days and the moments when I feel that need to just suddenly remember that there's a moment to be lived. And that's also why I gave you fair warning that I would be reading it at a wildly rapid clip. And I'll read it a second time so that we can maybe focus a little bit more easily, more comfortably on the words. As I was putting away the groceries I'd spent the morning buying for the week's meals I'd planned around things the baby could eat, things my husband would eat, and things I should eat because they aren't too fattening, late on a Saturday afternoon, after flinging my coat on a chair and wiping the baby's nose, while asking my husband what he'd fed it for lunch, and whether the medicine I'd brought for him had made his cough improve, wiping the baby's nose again, checking its diaper, stepping over the baby who was reeling to and from the bottom kitchen drawer with pots and pans and plastic cups, occasionally clutching the hem of my skirt and whining to be held. I was half listening for the phone, which never rings for me, to ring for me, and someone's voice to say that I could forget about handing back my students' exams, which I'd had for a week, that I was right about the wasteland, that I'd been given a raise, all the time wondering how my sister was doing, whatever happened to my old lovers, and why my husband wanted a certain brand of toilet paper. And I wished I hadn't, but I'd bought another fashion magazine that promised to make me beautiful by Christmas, and there wasn't room for the creamed corn. And every time I opened the refrigerator door, the baby rushed to grab whatever was on the bottom shelf, which meant I constantly had to wrestle jars of its mushy food out of its sticky hands. And I stepped on the baby's hand, and the baby was screaming, and I dropped the bag of cake flour I'd bought to make cookies with. And my husband rushed in to find out what was wrong because the baby was drowning out the sound of the touchdown, although I had scooped it up and was holding it in my arms. So its crying was inside my head like an echo in a barrel. And I was running cold water on its hand, while somewhere in the back of my mind wondering what to say about the wasteland and whether I could get away with putting broccoli in a meatloaf, when suddenly, through the window, came the wild cry of geese. So I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about what is it to cross that threshold? What does it look like to cross a threshold into mindfulness, into presence, into being available to that wild cry of geese? So I'd like to hear from folks. What do you think of that? Any responses? Okay.
If you want the word, please put it in the chat because there are too many people to see. And in the chat, I can see that you want to respond and I will open it to you. Okay.
But I would like to share something, Gloria. I'm Titi. I mean, it was that interruptive moment when you asked me or us, I'd like to know, what are you thinking? Where does it touch you? And yeah, sometimes it needs that moment. Yeah, that moment of interruption, that moment where everything stops, and yeah, and that's where I fail very often in my daily life, in my routine, to really stop myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's very much the point of the poem, is just to remind ourselves that yes, it's perfectly natural that we're going to have all of these thoughts coming in from so many different places. So many different things are demanding our attention. I mean, that woman, that narrator in that poem, is doing the best she can in with multiple things to cope with. I used this poem in a workshop the other night, and I had a 91-year-old man in the workshop, and he raised his hand and he said, "I just want you to know that in my household, my wife never would have let me get away with that." But I think that that for many of us in those moments when we are trying to meet everyone else's needs, sometimes it takes that getting us to that brink, getting us to that threshold that makes us able to hear the sound of the wild geese. Or maybe it's the sound of the wild geese that makes us able to just pause I happen to be lucky enough to live in a flight path, a migration path of wild geese. And it's almost like a date every morning when I'm sitting and having my coffee. And generally at around 10 after 5 in the morning, a group of them will go across, and in the midst of the silence surrounding me, that sound is just such a welcome visitor. And it always brings me back into the quiet. Anyone else have a response to either the poem or your own, the way that you cross the threshold? I'm sorry, Katharina.
Yes, Kate wanted to say something, and then after that, Nancy.
Yes, hi. Thank you for both poems. It'd be wonderful if it was possible to have copies of the poems at the end of the session.
Yes.
I wanted to share first how special poetry is for transporting us. My children are growing up now, but immediately it transported me back to those early years and that kind of sense of, yes, life can be like that. As you say, this sense of this frenetic energy, and she's doing her best, and yet it's never quite enough. And then something, in this case, the geese, offer that opening in the chatter and the busyness. I was also struck by how often it's animals. I'm lucky enough to work as an equi-coach, offering wellbeing coaching with my horses, and we're also surrounded by animals in the family. And so often it is the animals who just give us this nudge. Wake up, be here now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
And then Nancy, please. And then after
yes, hello everybody. I just wrote in the chat that both times you read the poem for us, Gloria, the rush and the haste and the busyness of life, it came over. I think you also will have it when you read it just for yourself on paper. And then, you sometimes have these moments, and for me it can also be like I work a lot with people who have complaints. I'm also a psychologist, and I always try to teach people, learn to say to yourself, stop. And I have to say it to myself time and time again, day after day after day, but just stop. And then it's so important to be friendly and compassionate for yourself, to see what you need, what you really need in that moment, because she's longing for the telephone to ring, but what do you really need? And that's such an important training, and this poem, it clutches it all beautifully together. So thank you for choosing this poem for us.
Thank you very much. And I when you mentioned looking at it on the page, Nancy, it also reminded me, when we look at it on the screen, there is a very important line in this poem, and it's the line where there's nothing. There is a breath built into the construction of the poem, and it's that beautiful pause right before she hears it, that even as a reader, when you're reading it, whether it's on the page or you're reading it aloud, just reminds you, without telling you anything, just the presence of that white space says, breathe, be here, be present to this. And so thank you for that, Nancy.
Yeah, the way things are put into paper are also very important. And so
thank you.
Stasi,
So,
and then Maiken. Gloria, is it okay that we
sure
to Stasi and also Maiken, if I pronounce that right? Excuse me.
Yes, you do. Thank you very much, and thank you for the poem, Gloria. It was really it was awakening something recognizable, that is for sure. And then you asked about this, what are the wild geese for you? What is it actually for me? Now I heard others say like it's animals or something else, but actually for me, it's more emotions. When I feel disturbed on the inside, like, whoa, what is going on here in me? Or my own reactions, which are not always the perfect reactions that I would like to. And then that makes me stop. So those are my wild geese, the wild geese of my inner life and what comes out of me that makes me stop and take a pause and step back a little bit to find out, okay, what is going on here, and really know the moment for more than just all this different stormy things that's going on both outside and inside. Yeah, but it has definitely the value to also see it as a wild goose. I think it could be definitely be compared to a wild goose or geese.
Thank you. I think those are great observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And we will listen to Stasi, and then I'll continue with the next poem, okay?
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gloria, for the poem. That was really, it made me just breathe faster with that. The whole rhythm of everything in me changed with that. And the great question too, what's crossing the threshold? Yeah, I started thinking about that. And of course, the sound usually does this for me. And this is the story. I was in I don't know if it was COVID or not, but I was sick, and all this movement was happening in my mind. Actually, I was not doing anything. I was just lying on a sofa, and then I caught myself of how can I, frankly thinking, just because I heard suddenly and noticed the sparrows flying outside my window. And that sound has something very magical, I think, to make us stop. But also the noticing, I think that's the threshold. When you notice, when you start observing, I think. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the sparrows. So we've talked about sound and how sound can bring us to these moments of mindfulness. And now I'm going to take you in a different direction and look at how the absence of sound, what can quiet do for us? And I'm going to be reading a poem by Pablo Neruda called Keeping Quiet. And I'm going to read it once, and then I will invite one of you to read it a second time, because I do believe that it's always very helpful to hear it a second time. And then I believe Camilla will play a beautiful piece of music for us while we take a 10-minute, an opportunity to write in response to it for 10 minutes. Now, before we do anything, I want to lay just one important ground rule. During any writing prompts, I am not expecting anybody to write a poem, okay? Sometimes it happens. I would certainly invite you to start a poem. I would invite you to simply write a reflection, a journal entry, whatever you want, however you want to use that 10 minutes. But I really want to make sure that no one is feeling pressured to perform or to create something on the spot. And then there will be the opportunity afterwards to share anything that you've written or anything that you'd like to say about the process of writing in response to the poem. So that's just to sort of lay out the sequence for you for the next portion of our time together. And I will begin with Pablo Neruda's Keeping Quiet. And thank you, Katharina, for putting it on the screen. Keeping quiet. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines, we would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you will keep quiet, and I will go. I'd like to invite someone to read it a second time. If we don't have any volunteers, I'd be happy to read it a second time myself, if that might be simpler. And then as soon as I finish, Camilla, that will be when you'll start.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
So after this, the second time of reading the poem, I will start playing a piece that fits with the poem. I will stop playing for like a second, and when I continue again, this will be the cue for the 10 minutes prompt. So just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
And Camilla, Gloria, before you read it, wanted to offer the prompt. Then you read it again, and then Camilla is playing.
That's a great idea.
We won't stop between the first minute playing of Camilla and the writing, okay? So I'll fill up the prompt, okay?
Okay, very good. In fact, if you want to put the prompt up now, Katharina, I can read it from my own
yes,
page.
I will.
Sure. Okay. So after I read the poem a second time, I would invite you to read this prompt. And it's really just a few moments to think about what comes from silence for you. So I'll read it a second time. Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. And now Katharina will put up the prompt. Thank you so much, Camilla. I am keenly aware that in a gathering of this sort, it would be wildly inappropriate for me to just start cheering and applauding uncontrollably, but know that that's what's in my heart right now. So I'd like to invite participants to, if you'd like to share what you've written, if you would like to talk about the process of writing in the presence of such beautiful music. This is your time to participate and to share. We might start with just I'll start by reading the prompt to get you kind of started with your sharing. So what I've asked you to do in this 10 minutes, and I participated as well, is to think about what comes from silence for you. Is it peaceful? Is it scary? Is it something to be sought or avoided? And I also asked you to think about Neruda's instruction to do nothing. He's very specific. He's very specific in the language he uses there. He doesn't say don't do anything. Don't do anything is sort of a, just passive thing. Doing nothing, I think he's asking us to pay attention to that as a conscious act, to sit, to be still, to do what looks like nothing, but is in fact deeply profound. So with that as the sort of the overarching goal, I just want to remind you also that if you didn't write anything about any of that, it's still valid, it's still meaningful, and it's still welcome. So any volunteers?
So since there's no one raising hand in the chat, I might share what I did.
Oh, please do, Katharina.
I took 2 lines from the poem, and the first line I repeated and the second line I changed. And it reads like this: life is what it is about. Certainly, the earth can teach us about green peace and inspire us who are preparing green wars, any wars.
Thank you. If you're feeling shy or uncomfortable about sharing what you've written, that's okay. I'm always in the same boat, so I sympathize. But would you like to talk about what it feels like to?
Okay, we have Eva. Eva wants to share. Yes.
Please do. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you. It was so beautiful to listen to the poems and the music, and I was very touched by it. And almost immediately, some words came to my mind, so I would like to share them.
Please do.
Silence, the spaces between that makes everything visible. Sadness and comfort, embraced by soft nothingness. The silent sound waves, weaving its way into my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. That's beautiful. Camilla, I'm curious how you feel hearing that response to your beautiful music.
Super nice to hear something like that. It's always very nice to hear audience who are inspired by the music, because I'm inspired myself because of the music I play. And I always try to get that inspiring feeling to the audience. So it's really, really nice, those words. Thank you.
We are going to listen to Lena from Norway and then to Stasi.
Thank you.
And then to Kate, you. So Lena, the floor is yours. Lena Pedersen from Norway. Yeah.
I think you are muted, Lena.
Please unmute.
Can you-
I'm trying to unmute you, but you have to do it. No. You're still muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
I
Good to hear
didn't
your
really,
voice.
I didn't really want to speak. I just wanted to share in the chat.
Can you repeat what you put in the chat so that everyone can hear it and know?
Yes,
Okay.
I can do that. I didn't really want to
Okay, fine. That's
speak. I
fine.
wanted to share in the chat, but I can read it. I can read it. I wrote, remembering. Life is simple, full, beautiful. Rest. Deep feeling of bliss. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Very beautiful. And your reading of it was very beautiful as well. It was also very musical. Thank you.
Thank you, Stasi.
Yes. Well, I've been trying to do a haiku thing because it puts me into structure 5-7-5. But before then, they just came when I was listening to the music, came a vision of a wine glass that's being rained, so rain falling on empty glass, something like that. So that's what I wrote. Warm drops on my glass, sitting in the summer rain, letting my storm out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very evocative image. I can really see it. Thank you.
Virginie van Dalen.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I heard the music, the very beautiful music, and I just started to write down something. Do nothing. I try hard. I'm searching, in search of nothing. Can't find it, can't reach it. Finally, I give up. Here it is, right before me.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Was this doing and nothing, and yes.
Yeah.
It's so simple and just drop it.
And as the saying goes,
grasp nothing, just stop.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginie. We're now listening to Joan Burke, and then Maiken, and then Elena.
I don't think I raised my hand actually.
Oh,
but I before I actually said I wrote that I could read up the poem, but now I have the chance to just share with you. Just say thank you. It's really touching to just share with you all and to be here with all of you. Thank you for Avo Pert. That's what I wrote first. Thank you, Avo Pert, the composer of this beautiful music, and thank you for sharing that music with us. I just started writing questions to myself. I just let I didn't think of what should I write. I just started writing some questions. How can I do nothing when my hands are always full of stuff? How can I do nothing when I move around? How will I be able to hear the wild geese crying in the sky if I forget to listen? And some scribbling in Danish too about, well, I can translate it in a way about the balance between beauty and pain that I recognize in silence.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you. That observation about beauty and pain is very profound. Thank you.
Maiken, please, and then Elena.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity actually to sit and write something that is, and be free and not locked in, in so many rules actually. Even though you did give the prompts, you also said be free, and that I took definitely some things from these prompts, and I will share that with you. So silence is a valuable gift that is not often given. And silence is full of life and wisdom. So the wisdom that actually comes from the silence is very valuable. And this wisdom is invisible in the wild winds of life. So all that Joan just described about doing and having and not listening, all these winds of life is actually making this wisdom invisible to us. So we have to stop and do this nothing for a while. And if we do nothing, something will appear. So this is doing nothing is actually making something appear. And it is something that is worth listening to. And doing nothing is also being released from doing. So actually the doing nothing is actually releasing us from doing all the time. So it's letting us be able to do nothing. And then the don't do anything is, for me, it's more restraining thing. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not supposed to go there. I'm not supposed to do something. And that is a restraining, and it's creating tension and judgment and resistance. So for me, there is a big difference between these two. At least that's how I understand it in this moment. So it could be different tomorrow. So these things, that's what I wanted to share. All this you actually provided gave me, the feeling to write these things down. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you both for what you're saying, and also for your courage in sharing. It's not an easy thing to do, and and selfishly, it's always my favorite part of every workshop is hearing what people write, and I'm deeply grateful to all of you who have shared, and if there's anyone else who would like to, I would love to hear it. I'm sure we all would. Thank you, Maiken.
Elena.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me the inspiration. I like being inspired. First exploding, then expanding, then experiencing, then just X thinker, X blinker, X talker, etc. Experiment that led me to the next level of being just X. That is what silence is.
It's beautiful and fascinating. Really, I love what you did with the language in that, the exploration. It's one of the things that's amazing about a short-timed writing exercise is where we hone in on details, and you've done such an interesting and moving job of that. Would you mind repeating the first 3 lines of that? Because I was very struck by the progression.
First exploding, then expanding, then experiencing, then just ex-thinker, ex-blinker, blinker, ex-talker, etc. This is just how it came. Yeah. When I do such a creative work or composing, I found out that when we are in the flow, we make it the most beautiful way. And when I start editing it later, the next day, it's not the same flow, and you feel it in a way.
Yeah, no, there's a wonderful urgency and an immediacy to it that's very, very engaging. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
I think there is no hand raised.
Okay.
So given the time, maybe we will move
Sure.
on with what we have planned.
Sure. Thank you
wait.
so much. Oh,
No, oh, no.
Okay.
You raised your hand again, but I got it. Okay, thank you.
okay. All right. So we have, we've looked at what it is what it takes to cross that threshold into presence, into mindfulness. And when we get there, we often find the silence that's waiting for us, and draw on that, draw from that, whatever we can. And then I think that there's a third stage, and that's what happens after we emerge from the silence. So after we emerge from that going in, how does it affect the way we relate to the world? How does it affect the way that we think about those very same things that started us off in Marilyn Nelson's poem? You know, those moments of frenetic energy, and how do we maintain this wonderful sense of calm and peace? And I think that the next poem, which is written by a marvelous poet named Rosemary Watola Tromer, has some fascinating and beautiful things to say about this process, about what waits for us on the other side of that threshold of quiet and of attentiveness. So I will read it to you twice, and then we will have another prompt. Okay, so this is The Way It Is by Rosemary Watola Tromer. Over and over we break open. We break and we break and we open. For a while, we try to fix the vessel, as if to be broken is bad, as if with glue and tape and a steady hand, we might bring things to perfect again, as if they were ever perfect, as if to be broken is not also perfect, as if to be open is not the path toward joy. The vase that's been shattered and cracked will never hold water. Eventually, it will leak. And at some point, perhaps, we decide that we're done with picking our flowers anyway, and no longer feel the need a place to contain them. We watch them grow, just as wildflowers do, unfenced, unmanaged, blossoming only when they're ready. And my God, how beautiful they are amidst the mounting pile of shards. So I will read it again to give you an opportunity to really let the words wash over you. The way it is, over and over, we break open. And we break, and we open. For a while, we try to fix the vessel, as if to be broken is bad, as if with glue and tape and a steady hand, we might bring things to perfect again, as if they were ever perfect, as if to be broken is not also perfect, as if to be open is not the path toward joy. The vase that's been shattered and cracked will never hold water. Eventually it will leak, and at some point, perhaps, we decide that we're done with picking our flowers anyway, and no longer need a place to contain them. We watch them grow just as wildflowers do, unfenced, unmanaged, blossoming only when they're ready. And my God, how beautiful they are amidst the mounting pile of shards. So I'd like to take us into the next prompt, and I will share it with you. And then I will give you some time to write again. And we will hear more magnificent music from Camilla. So the prompt for this poem is to really ask you, what does it mean to be present, to have that experience of really being in the moment, to meet the moment as it is, not how it might be or how we wish it could be. And this poem really challenges us to surrender our notions of perfection and to redefine those notions and to find the beauty among the shards of our own brokenness or the brokenness of the world around us. So for this prompt, I'd like you to think of something broken in your life. Have you repaired it or left it unbroken or left it broken? What does it feel like in your hands? What does it sound like when you pick it up and put it down? Do you handle it with greater reverence because of its brokenness? Do the broken things in your life reflect your own brokenness? Are you trying to mend yourself? Or can you find the beauty in your brokenness? So we'll take about 10 minutes now to, and Katharina will leave the prompt up so that you can refer back to it if you need to. And then I'll turn it back to Camilla to give us some musical guidance in our writing. Thank you, Camilla. That was magnificent, Camilla. Thank you so much for bringing us into that place with you, because you were clearly transported and you were generous enough to invite us along on that journey. Thank you. Well, would anyone like to share what they wrote or how they felt about the music as a conduit to writing? Again, I always want you to be feel welcome to read your work, but in no way obligated to. So the floor is yours, whoever would like it.
So here's Tatini. Please, Tatini, take the floor.
Yeah, I started to dance. I couldn't write, but I just started to dance, and to dance my brokenness, my growing older, my limitations, and the precious pearl that occurs with that constant rubbing of that discomfort of being broken again and again and again. So the preciousness can open, and so it was both the limitations and the preciousness. Just a moment. And I could really celebrate that closing and the opening and the limitations and the freedom.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share? Well, I will say, from my experience of that time, because as I said, you know, I consider myself very much a participant in this process. I was so struck by the blending of the music and the poem, and how the two of them worked to really to celebrate the idea of appreciating the brokenness, but also appreciating the fact that that brokenness in and of itself has its own beauty. The line that is so meaningful to me in the poem well, they all are, but one that comes very early in the poem is, we break and we break and we open. And the idea of that breaking, you can almost visualize, you know, an egg opening up and the life inside the egg. And, you know, it may be that our instinct initially is to look at the broken thing as something that, as she says, needs to be repaired. But if we were to repair the egg, then the bird would never be free. The life inside that thing that is breaking through, that is breaking open, wouldn't be able to. And that's really where she's inviting us to go in this poem, to and the statements that she makes that are very much ways of asking questions are very, very important. As if with glue and tape and a steady hand, we might bring things to perfect again. And she's very intentional about the word perfect. She goes on to say, as if they were ever perfect, as if to be broken is not also perfect. And, you know, in the text of the poem, she never talks about eggs and birds and beaks and things like that. But if you think about that metaphor, it is the breaking that is the perfection. It's where the life is able to come through. So I think that it's a really remarkable poem. And also I love when she says at the end, my God, how beautiful they are. They being the wildflowers, the things that we don't cut down and bring into the house and put in water, just unmanaged and blossoming only when they're ready, just as she's inviting us to blossom when we're ready and trusting that we will. And how beautiful they are amidst the mounting pile of shards, that the brokenness of itself, that those shards themselves are things of beauty. So would anyone else like to share before we go into our closing? And you don't have to just share what you've written. If you want to talk about, has this made you think about poetry and music as companions in a different way, as ways into the mindfulness? Mm-hmm. I heard a voice. And if you could just say your name so that we can find you.
Hi, my name is Amalia.
Hello.
We're here with two of us. I'd like to try to share what I wrote, as brokenness is something quite familiar, even though the suggestion was to maybe perhaps think on something that is broken outside of us. I immediately thought of all the things that have broken in my body, literally. So that's where the writing went. Okay, I'll share the writing. Left knee says something's broken. Right foot seems broken now. Fifth cervical disc herniated. That means broken. Immune system broke down some time ago. Holding this brokenness with tenderness feels like a heap of shards in my hands, glistening like precious gems, freshly excavated out of the earth. Light being shattered on all the sharp edges and surfaces, creating in me a world of wonder and bewilderment. Handle with care as not to hurt my carrying hands. Move slowly and mindfully. Love in every step.
Thank you so much. That is an absolutely gorgeous reflection, a beautiful poem, and a miracle, because when somebody can write something so deeply tender and intimate and profound in 15 minutes, well, clearly, Camilla, that is a testament to the environment that you created for us. And thank you so much for sharing that. It was beautiful. Thank you.
And thank you, Nadia. We have Dragana who would like to speak. And then Sasha.
I would like to add just one sentence that my brokenness reminds me of my wholeness. Wholeness, wholeness, brokenness and wholeness. And only when I'm broke, I remember, okay, I was whole. So in the pain, we can find, a new start to be whole again. Maybe broken, but yes, we are perfect, even broken, yeah?
Thank you. It's beautiful, thank you.
Hello, Gloria and Camilla and everybody. But I just want to say first, really thank you, because I'm one of those people who dread poetry and mindfulness. Reason being, because I was trained in the West in English, and I live in Montenegro, and I had to translate all that into my language, which of course could never come across in a way that you so beautifully do it through your voice and also through your violin, Camilla. And because we are talking about being broken, and so I'm kind of breaking exactly, I'm actually living it. So I thought I'll just read in a broken way what I put down. And I apologize in advance if it doesn't make any sense, but let's get broken, okay?
Thank you.
So the first thing after Gloria invited us, what came to my mind is so many things broken. Where do I start? Maybe with that, what broken actually means. Maybe by knowing brokenness, we'll resolve all many things broken. Is the other side of broken that has an answer? Openness comes with breaking. They are inseparable. But am I too involved in a pain of breaking? Not to see that vast openness, that potential that is free from anything even being able to be broken. Camilla's violin soothes the broken shreds. Curve the sharp edges. Helps me sail through imprisonment of fixing what has been broken. And she's playing now, live, accompanying every moment. Thank you. Letting go brokenness and fixing and breaking and widening a gap of opening a little bit more each time until I learn to truly let go. So that's me in a broken, so really thank you.
So beautiful, Sasha. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you. Again, it's a very, very selfish moment in every workshop for me is when I get to hear what people have written. and your generosity in sharing it is such a gift to all of us. Thank you very much, everyone. And also, if you haven't read, you've shared as well, simply by being present. And that is, of course, what we are celebrating in this conference is the notion of presence, the notion of being mindful. And I cannot believe that we have already been together for an hour and 45 minutes, which sadly means that we're getting ready to wrap up. And I have, so the poems that we've worked with are all poems that are in, I'll hold it up again, this magnificent anthology, Poetry of Presence. But the poem that I will be closing with is a poem that I wrote. And Katharina asked me to share a poem that would bridge the notion of what we do personally through our mindfulness practice and how our personal mindfulness can affect the world. And I will warn you, I will probably not be quite as composed as our wonderful violinist is, but I will do my very best. And this is called Let It Begin With Me.
Sorry, one thing, Gloria. I will play the short piece after you finished.
Okay, thank you so much, Camilla. Let it begin with me. My third grade teacher filled the blackboard with the words we would sing at the school assembly. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Even then, at age 8, I knew this was a tall order. Vietnam was ravaging young men who were still boys, like my cousin Jimmy, whose letters scrawled in an 18-year-old's hurried hand, bearing nightmares of war and dreams of homecoming. And now in the rubble of Lviv and Mariupol, the innocent huddle in basements while bombs shriek overhead. Now on the streets of Poland, refugees seek asylum in a land not their own. Now, 10,000 miles away, I ask myself, will peace ever begin with anyone? Then, like the butterfly that lights on a wave and changes the course of the ocean, I do what I can, when I can, where I can. I make soup for my homebound neighbor. I turn off the news and pick up a poem. I tell someone I love them. I smile at a stranger. I pray for those in harm's way, and I hope. I cannot end a war, but I can let peace begin again and again and again and again with me. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Katharina, and all the members of the board of AYAMBA. It's been a privilege to spend this time with you. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gloria. And especially for giving voice to the poem that you wrote. I was deeply touched, and even more touched when I heard you speak the words and show us the emotion. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Camilla. I'm so grateful that you came here. I remember how cautious you were when we talked about a live performance via Zoom and all the precautions we took and the anxiety we had. Well, participants have shown you what the impact was. So even though the quality sometimes was impeded by Zoom, it was there. It was live, and that is important.
Thank you.
So, dear colleagues, dear friends, please join us again. We have another meeting tomorrow with my dear colleagues. Tatini is here. Many colleagues who will come tomorrow and share important aspects of what we are doing in mindfulness. Please remember to be with us soon, tomorrow and on other Eyamba events. And also, I would like to thank my colleagues, Eugenio, Camilla, Sharida, and Tatini for organizing together with me this festival of today and tomorrow. We had fun doing it, and that made the work lighter. And when I see you here, I see your smile, Dragana. I can't see everyone, but then I feel very happy. Yeah, Sasha, I see your smile too. So sorry for not seeing all your smiles, but I can also feel how this worked. Great. Be with us soon. Yeah, Tamara, Amalia. So no, Will, I'm going to look.
I have one suggestion. So maybe
Yes,
maybe
we'll have a closing.
We expin ourselves and then we go all on gallery mode so we can see everyone. How's that?
Sure, that's a great
And
idea.
then one thing we will do is raise your hands like this to feel the touch of the whole community. So please put yourself on gallery mode.
And let's unpin.
Everything is unpinned. It's quite difficult, huh? It's a test of whether we can do it. Goodbye, dear colleagues. Hopefully see many of you tomorrow or at the next event.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
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 Thank you for the beautiful music. Thank you so much.
Thank you.